Hey there, welcome to the Compare to Who show. I'm Heather Creekmore, and I'm really glad you're watching today. And hey, I'm really glad you're listening today. Today, I have a special guest, and we are continuing my series. I never really came up with a good name for this series, but I'm talking to a bunch of non-diet dietitians, registered dietitians, because I feel like you, my people, you know a lot about food. And the last person in the world that you would ever think to call is a dietitian because you know about food. But today, I want to give you another opportunity to hear from someone who actually has a degree in this stuff and knows what she's talking about, but takes an approach that I think you are going to find so super helpful. So my guest today is Amy Carlson. Let me tell you just a little bit about Amy. She is an RD. She's a registered dietitian. She has an awesome practice in Houston, Texas, down the road from me, a little too far down the road for us to meet for lunch, but still strong Texas vibes here we're going with. But Amy's been serving the eating disorder population for a couple decades now. She knows her stuff. She's the mom of 4 beautiful children. She's been married for 20 years, and she spends time speaking to women, encouraging women. And she has a cool app that she helped create called Peace with Food. And we're going to talk about that too. So Amy Carlson, welcome to the Compare to Who show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Heather and I can match each other's vibe really well.
There's going to be a lot of energy today. Yeah. Okay. So Amy, before we get into the good stuff, and let me tell the listeners and the viewers what the good stuff's going to be, because here's where I told Amy we're going today. I want us to answer the question, but I really need to lose weight. My whole life will be better if I lose weight. Help me lose weight. How do I lose weight without doing all the diety things and thinking about food my entire life? So that's a question we are going to answer today. So don't go anywhere, as they used to say in the old television commercials, right? But Amy, first, give us a little background. Tell us more about who you are and why do you do this? What is your passion? Where does your passion for this come from?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. You know what is weird? When you just give that introduction, I realized I've been married for 27 years. Isn't that weird?
That's awesome. Congratulations.
I say 20, and then I'm like, I think we just celebrated our 27th. That's really weird. Well, I'm going to give you the abbreviated version of my story, but I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, the youngest of 5. I was a gymnast. I had a mom who dieted. I grew up in the church. My dad was church choir director. He was a school teacher. And my mom struggled with her weight on and off dieting her whole life. So I was a pretty average kid size, eating everything, and went through puberty. And I had a gymnastic coach that told me, hey, if you could lose 5 pounds, your timing on the uneven bars would be that much better, which we can all as women giggle and laugh and go, that's cuckoo. But she did. And she really affirmed to me what I already believed about myself, which was that I was too much and not enough. And that in my mind, that registered to me that I needed to lose 100 pounds. So I went in the locker room and I bawled my eyes out and I said, I'll never, ever be told that again. Mm-hmm. And subsequently, my eating disorder began. And that many years ago, I really didn't have a real context for eating disorders. Mm-hmm. And so my struggle began. I really down the road of anorexia, which eventually down the road led to bulimia, down the road led to binge eating, and then orthorexia. So I really had the whole gamut. There wasn't even language for all of that back then. But what I knew is that my mom had dieted, and that's how I knew how to manipulate and control my body. And I knew she had done that in the context of the church and even with some spiritual shade on it. And so I felt it was my job to do that and control and manipulate my body. Fast forward, years of recovery. God is so gracious and loving and kind and led me through really kind of a windy road of recovery. I didn't plan on being a dietitian. I became a dietitian. I got my master's in nutrition. And then I really didn't plan on working with eating disorders. And I was in corporate wellness. And anyway, as the Lord would have it, I sat across from a young woman who had an eating disorder. And I went, yeah, okay, yeah. And then as a dietitian, I was presented, I worked in the med center in Houston, and I did high risk OB and diabetes. And what I could tell from early practice was that women's struggle was the same. It was the same. How they viewed their body, that it was dysfunctional or not enough. No matter what they had come to me for, their doctor had referred them to me, the struggle was the same. The struggle was, I'm not enough. I need to diet. I need to change. And I was just, wow. And so the Lord, through a lot of series of things, let me be in private practice, which was a miracle. And I got to work with girls and women of all ages. Initially, I worked with men and boys too. And then when I went and practiced in my home, I went just to girls and women, and really then got to do some speaking starting many, many years ago in my own church, and then all over the country in other churches and places and conferences. And it's just been a cool experience to watch the Lord move and do these things that only he can do.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay. You said, and I was trying to remember exactly how you said it, but you said your mom did her dieting in the context of the church. And I think you used like the cool lingo, like that threw some shade on it or something. Like my kids say something like that. Yeah. But let's go there for a second. Okay. Spell that out for me. Like, what is that? What does that look like? I think I know what that looks like, but what does that look like?
I think you do know what it looks like. So I actually grabbed a few books before we got on because I thought this is so important for women to hear. I say in a talk I give inside the app that, we've been doing this for decades and we're just doing it with upgraded illustrations. I recently helped for 2 summers, help my mom clean out the farm. My dad had passed away and just really cleaning out the stuff. And I came across some fascinating books. And for example, devotions for dieters.
Ooh.
Devotions for dieters. So you can imagine, right? Free to be thin.
Yep. I think we had that one at my house.
Yeah. Your head. The Thin Book by a formerly fat psychiatrist. I mean, it hurts me just to say these titles. I'm so sorry. So what I read and came across was that really, and I saw it happen, and it's still happening because I have precious women come into my office with books with Christian authors that are really, if you love God, you're thin. If you have self-control in context of the Holy Spirit, you're thin. Yeah. If you honor God with your life and you are living a surrendered life, you're thin. Right. Whoa, what? Wow. Right. That's the spiritual shade I'm talking about. So I watched my mom be in women's ladies groups where they were praying for each other to be really good at their diets. And so in my mind, I thought that is exactly what we had to do. We had to offer our body as a living sacrifice. Can you imagine how janked up that gets? Oh, Jesus, forgive us. Right? I'm going to offer my body. And if I can't control, and here's the reality, there's 150,000 different diets. So whatever decade it was, that was the one we were supposed to do and honor with our body. What?
Right. So spelling that out, I think you and I are the same age. Spelling that out, like in the early 90s, honoring God with your body meant only eating white bagels, right? Because they were fat-free, right? I mean, like, think about how silly that is.
I used to pride myself that I would go and have a bagel and I would be like, oh, I'm really rocking it on the no fat, low fat. Yep. And now what's so fascinating is these precious girls with eating disorders are like not terrified of an avocado and they're terrified of a bagel. And I'm like, man, that's not was not happening for me in the middle of my eating disorder.
Bagel with turkey, no cheese, and then fat-free frozen yogurt. And I grew up on the East Coast, so it was Turkey Hill, mint, chocolate chip, frozen yogurt, fat-free. And I could eat a whole half gallon in maybe 48 hours if I was going slow. But it was fat-free, right?
Think about it. That's the thing. When I tell these girls that we ate fat-free like chips, or what is that? Is this an oxymoron? Their eyes go buggy. And this is the craziness of it. When we put it in context, we start to go, wow, this is so messed up. This is so messed up. I had in one of my rotations, studying to be a dietitian, I got to be in downtown Houston, scary. Actually, it was scary part of Houston, at a community center. And the dietitian that I shadowed was like 80. She was scary. She was a believer. She was hardcore, man. She did not mess around with these women. She just loved them so well. But I was so scared. And I had my little lab coat and I'd follow her into every room. And I just was like, oh, and on one of the last, we'd sit and eat our lunch together, basically in silence. I was just like, eekies. So one of the last days she said, ask me anything. Ask me anything. Well, she kind of said it more mean like that, but ask me anything you want to know. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure you're in like the first graduating class of dietitians since you're like 80. And I said, what's the holy grail of like weight loss? Like you've been around for so long, bless your heart. What's like the holy grail of eating? Like, what have you found to be? And she just looked at me like, oh, baby. She said, everything that comes around has been around. Mm-hmm. There is no new diet. Mm-hmm. There is no new diet. And she said, moderation and how God created our bodies. That's the holy grail. I mean, I'm like taking note, like, okay, whatever you're saying is true. And I've been in practice for 24 years. And I would say, yes, I would. Yeah. Wow. Now I'm like the old dietitian.
Well, no, I mean, I get that, right? Because if you are over the age of, I'm going to just generally say 45, you called keto South Beach at some point, right? But keto, I don't know, keto sounds healthier because it's kind of a medical term. But, and listen, and please, if you're watching or listening today, like, Amy and I are not mocking these diets. No. We are just trying to be real about the truth that diets won't save us.
Yeah, amen.
Diets, and be real about the truth, because I think, when I used to speak a lot, COVID's kind of shut down my speaking schedule, but when I used to speak a lot, my big thing was always, what is the definition of insanity? Yes. It's doing the same thing over and again, expecting different results. Yes. And friends, if you are like me, like my story, and, Amy, with your story, getting into some of the more severe ED, I know my listeners and viewers have been there too, but I had tried every diet. Yes. Like every single one of them, and always got this, like, the next diet, you get this optimism, right? This, okay, Monday, I'm going to start this new thing. And maybe Saturday you go and you buy all the food for the new thing. I mean, we were vegan in my house. I think we made it through dinner. But Saturday I had bought like all of these really weird things. And then I had this cookbook and I made the recipe for breakfast and for lunch and for dinner. And my husband sat across from me because he was going to do it too. Cause he's so a supportive guy. So he's like, okay, yeah, we'll all do this. This makes sense. And he looked at me and he was like, this is horrible. I can't make the children eat this. Let's order a pizza. And that was the end of our story of being vegan. But I mean, I share that in that, like, we try all the things. And so the truth that we're getting at when we talk about like this diet or that diet and how they've gone around and around is they're really, it's like Ecclesiastes says, there's nothing new under the sun. Right. And if we think that this is the solution to what we're struggling with is the next diet, the next fad diet, because guess what? This is 2021. And by 2022, 2023, every year, there will be something new. And 5 years from now, if you're watching this and it's 2026 and YouTube's still around and all the things, you're going to be like, ooh, why are they talking about keto? That was like so 2021 and no one does that anymore. Right. Like, and there will be something new. I mean, you've been doing this long enough. When I first started speaking, everyone was paleo. Yeah. Like that was the thing. Right. And so paleo's kind of faded out a bit. And, and as I was saying it, I remember thinking, well, I really hope this is true. I hope there will be something new after this. I hope we haven't arrived. And there always is.
Always is. Always is. And you know what? I want to echo what you said, Heather, I want to hug every listener. I always say I want to do hammock therapy where I just let them be in the hammock in my backyard, just have soft music and go, there is no way, there is no ridicule for the diets that you've done. If Heather and I had not participated and done all that, we wouldn't even be able to speak on this. This is the tenderness that goes, it is so exhausting. It's so exhausting. And when I had come out of my bulimia and so my brain was like, the orthorexia went then to, I'm going to eat perfectly. And again, perfectly was relative. It was relative, right? It was like, is that vegetarian? Is that the zone that was back 30? And so, right. I mean, it was like, I'm going to eat because one, I'm a dietitian now. So, whoa, I'm studying to be a dietitian. I better kind of walk that out. And everyone kind of looked at, and I'm like, wow, I love fried chicken. Sorry, guys. I just really love a good piece of fried chicken. But it isn't that there is, what we can do is that we can feel shame, and there's no shame in that. In fact, that's what we're actually trying to expose, is to go, man, we're in this together. Like, we're in this together, and we have to encourage one another, or we'll keep looping. And for some of you, just as a dietitian, I know your doctor has said, hey, I want you to be vegan, or which is hard. That's a hard lifestyle. I mean, that's intense. What I have found, truly, some people enjoy a vegan lifestyle, but a lot of people, it's masking for eating disorder behavior and things. I certainly find that with teenagers, not as much as adults who kind of walked out like, certainly for teenagers who've watched a documentary prematurely. At school, they throw in a documentary, and these poor kids have no autonomy. The only thing they know how to say, go to their parents and say, I guess I don't want to eat meat because I feel bad about the meat industry. And it's like, oh, too soon, people, too soon. Introduction of disorders. So there's so much compassion. And actually what we're doing is we're calling out freedom. We're calling, oh, there's something better. There's something better. Won't we want better? Won't we want better? And so I echo these Heather's words of, there's no mocking. And certainly the enemy always comes up with shame. And what we're saying is, we're going to just call out that shame and go, no, we're in this together.
Right. Because if you think about it, and I talk to women about this all the time in my coaching, like, so many of us have collected all of these rules, right? Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. But we've collected these rules over decades and over the changes in the trends, right? So like, some of us who learned, like we talked about in the late 80s and 90s, that fat was bad, then went on to learn that carbs are bad. And so it's hard, even though maybe we're hearing, okay, it's okay to eat fat, it's still in the back of the head, like, oh, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't have too much fat either. So I'm not having fat, and I'm not having carbs, and oh, well, fruits are carbs. Okay, get rid of fruit. The fruit's bad, and the rules, we don't like necessarily like get over the rules and push them aside and move on to the new rules. We just keep adding rules. And now, because of IF, I can only eat between the hours of 12 and 6, and I can only eat, what is there left for me to eat? I guess I can eat an avocado, although I'm a little worried about the fat content, but like, there's nothing like it, and it becomes this big, monstrous burden. Just thinking about how to eat is overwhelming because we've collected all these rules. And this is where I want us to go today. There's so many places we could go, and we might go to some other places too, but I don't want to miss the main place. So we've collected all these rules. We desperately want to be free, right? We just want to have I remember thinking, like, what is a normal relationship with food? Do I know anyone that has a normal relationship with food? Like, what would that even be like to not think about food all the time, right? Like, that's what we desire. And then, dun, 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 we go to the doctor, and we get on the scale, and the doctor says, you're going to need to lose that 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever amount. You're going to need to lose that weight, or you're staring diabetes in the face, or maybe you already have diabetes and you need to get it off so the diabetes, so type 2 can go in some sort of remission, right? Like, no, you got to get the weight off. And then we go home, and it's like, what do you do? Amy, what do you do? What's the right answer, right? Intuitive eating, like, won't I just eat all the things if I do that, right? Like, so talk to us. What do we do? And talk specifically. Let's start by addressing specifically, because I don't want to miss this woman. I know she's listening. Talk specifically to the woman who has come home from the doctors with that mission. I have to lose weight. Where do I start?
First, I'm going to put her in my hammock and then have 30 minutes of hammock therapy.
I love it.
What happens is we get so stressed. I know you've talked about this in your podcast, that autonomic nervous system, and we then go back to what is familiar to us, which is control. Control is never the answer. Mm-hmm. So let me just go a few different angles on this, because I want to, one of the things that we can do, I can get in the weeds in terms of just, which is never the weeds, of just how good God is. Then people go like, I want to hear that and tell me exactly what to do as a dietitian. So I want to be specific on that. And then I do want to say how good God is. One of the things I want you to know, again, 24 years of practice, that doctors have one note card when it comes to weight and disease. One note card. And they pull it out and they say, you need to exercise more and eat less, let's say fried food or lower fat or whatever it is. So it doesn't matter what disease. So I just had this young, beautiful, lovely girl go to the doctor. She exercises and eats well and is intuitive eating, and her cholesterol numbers were a little bit up. Well, that's primarily hereditary. She's young, she has all this. And without asking any questions to the doctor, and she has a history of eating disorder. And without any information about her, he said, you need to exercise more. Okay, trigger. She already exercises and she's working really hard on moderation with that because of her history of eating disorder. And you need to eat less fried foods, of which she eats none. That's all he said. So why I'm saying this, another one came in with a history of eating disorder. He said this whole long story about her kind of, addressing her weight, etc. And she said, I guess you didn't see in my chart about my eating disorder, and he said, oh no, what do you binge on? That was his, of which not binge, she was a restrictor. So it was so wounding to her. So for everyone who's ever experienced something like that in the doctor, I just want to encourage you that you're not crazy. And there are wonderful doctors. There is absolutely doctors that are the exception, that are so tender and listening. I have another client who's just a tremendous doctor who has said, give me your dietitian's number. I want to hear what she has to say. I mean, so there's totally the exception. I want to say that because as a general rule, the women that I work with are scared of going to the doctor, have a lot of anxiety around it. The other thing I want to say specifically is that you always have the right to say, I want to be blind weighed. And also, I don't need to be weighed today. For the most part, unless they're calculating medication that requires them to know what your weight is, they generally, but what they want it for is insurance. And so you can give a general number. You can just say, I think I don't want to be weighed today. And I want to empower people with that information because, and I every doctor I go to, I don't wait so that I can train them on that, of saying, let me tell you what it's like to walk into your office and how many women are sick and won't come to the doctor because they're so afraid.
Yeah.
I say that just for you listeners to go, that's so, even if I'm there for diabetes, I don't have to get on the scale.
Right.
We can look at each other and go, do you think I need to lose weight for diabetes? Sure. Okay, I already know that. That's not rocket science. I don't have to get on the scale. So information done. And what that takes that anxiety way down. The other thing is the doctor is not the expert of your nutrition and your body and your weight history. You are. You know that. Most doctors actually, unless they're really paying attention and are sitting with you and listening, they don't have that information. So it may be true that losing weight, again, this would take like 2 more podcasts to talk about, but it may be true that that losing weight may affect your blood pressure or your diabetes. And I could go into the science of why that's true. But I'm going to tell you something that's so liberating. Most all disease processes are mostly affected by moderation in eating. They're most positively affected in moderation in your eating. And for the most part, eating a wide variety of foods throughout the day, listening to your hunger and fullness, and eating generally whole foods, meaning less processed, more whole foods. I'm not talking whole foods, but whole foods, which can be expensive. And right, relatively whole foods in moderation, according to your hunger and fullness, is the best thing you can do for most disease processes. That's the truth. And it's the baseline. It's like you can go through a whole book on one disease and then it all comes out in like basically moderation. And you can go through a whole book on another disease and it comes out, but basically, relatively, less fast food. That's true across the board. Mm-hmm. And so the things that you need to know about nutrition, you probably already do know. You probably already know them. You actually know that eating a wide variety of foods and your fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean protein, that doesn't change. That's like true 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 80 years ago. It's just kind of how our bodies are made. But what we tend to do is we go to one extreme and then we tax our body with this demanding weight loss. We're demanding something from our body. We go into the feast and famine cycle. We may lose some weight. And then what we usually do is lose muscle. And then we replace that when we kind of give up. And then that comes back. And it's all this cycle. That's harder on any disease than anything. Yeah. That's part of that cycle. And so for some of your listeners, they have never known not being on a diet.
Right.
For adult life, they have never known that. And so if a doctor says you need to, and you know what really actually makes me want to have hives and is this, so many doctors use the language of just go on keto, just go on, because it's something simple in their mind that they can give somebody. That's it. And the thing is, somebody will experience initial weight loss and then the doctor appears to be right. And then the person seems to have failed because they couldn't keep the weight loss diet, et cetera, going. Right. Where the doctor's like, well, you need to lose weight. It's a really weird, vicious cycle. And let me encourage you. And again, this could be a whole separate long, is that the reality is your body, you are the expert of your own body. So for example, when I eat corn, I grew up on a farm, right? Who doesn't eat corn? When I eat corn chips or corn and stuff, I get a bellyache. And sometimes it's worth it to me. And sometimes it's not.
You do live in Texas.
I know.
Amy. I mean, it's pretty much,
I know.
If you can't eat chips and salsa, you can't eat out.
I can make that happen. There's some brands and it's better than others. How to eat chips and guac. How could I not eat chips and guac? You just love chips and guac. So, right. But I'm the expert of my own body. So there's not a rule that says I can't eat corn. I intuitively am listening to the fact that I tend to get a bellyache, and I can tell if whatever that thing is, I can be like, oh yeah, if I eat apples on an empty stomach, I'm going to get a tummy ache. But if I eat apples with peanut butter with a meal, I'm not going to get a bellyache. So those aren't rules. Those are observations. And so we're observing about our body. What is it that my body's telling me here? And so, for example, somebody with type 2 diabetes is going to be an expert in their body. They're going to listen. They're going to check their blood sugar. They're going to see, wow, my blood sugar does great when I do this. And then, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting observation without judgment, is that when I eat this, which I thought was okay, my blood sugar tends to spike. I've noticed a pattern. So we're looking for patterns, and we're doing that, not clinging to this external agenda and outcome, which is somebody else's version of what we should weigh.
Right.
Oh, wait, let's say that again. Glory to God. Glory to God. Can you imagine that sweet gymnastic coach telling me that my timing on the bars would be better if I lost 5 pounds? Oh, she said my hips. So this woman's observation of my body and what I believe to be true triggered a cascade of events. Well, we get to go, wait, oh, that's interesting. So that's interesting. The doctor told me that. Now let me take that home and go, what's true about that? What's true? Well, I do, let's say, have type 2 diabetes and what medications are working for me. And I found that walking is enjoyable. I'm going to get into that. And that feels good. And I like to listen to podcasts and, right. Okay, Lord, what do I have? Okay. That's a whole different feeling and observation, observing and making some of those corrections, than going, I have to lose weight. I have to lose weight,
Right.
or this disease is going to take it. No, it's
Right.
okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, because weight loss, and I talk about idolatry. I just did the show right before the episode, right before this one, is about idolatry. Weight loss becomes the goal of our lives, right?
Yes.
And I mentioned this on a show, I think it was last year. I really felt like God had kind of shown me one time, and it was the strangest revelation, Amy, but I felt like God had shown me how that you've spent most of your life trying not to eat.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's such a strange thing. But yet it was like, ding, ding, ding. That's it. That's it. I have spent most of my life trying to figure out how not to eat. Right. Because the goal of my life, and I'm speaking past tense, but the temptation is still there, right? I still can get caught up in wrong thinking and have to be like, nope, nope, God, not going out down that road again. Woo, forgive me for taking that 10-minute mental journey. I'm coming back, but the temptation is still there sometimes to make that the most important thing and then it's so crazy, Amy, right? Because if you stop and think about it, it's like, wait a second. So the most important thing I have to offer the world is a thinner version of me. Wait, what? What? Like, that's just weird. Right?
And Heather, one of the things that the Lord is so did in one of the talks, I don't remember which one it was, he had given this to me. So obviously I live near NASA, and some of our dear friends are astronauts. And at the time, we have one of our good friends is in the space station right now. And if you've never seen like a walk, where they're tethered to the space station and they're out and you're like, what the, right? They're tethered. And the Lord gave me just the most beautiful picture of how our hunger tethers us to the Creator. It reminds us, it's like a shepherd calling his sheep going, I made you. He didn't have to make us to have hunger or desires or satisfaction or pleasure. He could have just made us like without stomachs even, right?
Right.
Gave us that enjoyment. It's in scripture. It's in Eden, right? It's in the Garden of Eden. It's this beautiful place and so our hunger tethers us to the Creator, reminding us that we were created, even for non-believers, people who don't know, right? And when Paul talks about the whole earth speaks of God, that our hunger speaks of God. It speaks of our submission. It speaks of our needing Him. And what the enemy has done is told us to manage that and suppress that, and that's not a gift. That's something to be controlled and managed and dismissed. And in fact, we're going to Instagram it and Pinterest it, how powerful I am to control my hunger. And as believers, we would do well to encourage each other. And the thing is, we could be the worst, which is what your whole podcast is, right? As believers, we get stuck in this cycle of envying, right? Even your beautiful to who is envying those that have mastered the ability to control their hunger. And it's like, I've given over to the idolatry, the idol of a certain weight and a certain version. And I talk about one of the, Paul says, be an imitator of me, like imitate me. I always say, could we as believers go imitate me? Are we like, don't imitate me because I'm kind of on my own, like over here. It's like, no, be imitators. And the thing that is attractive to not only to other believers, but to the world is a woman, or certainly a man, that is surrendered to the Lord. And those things are just not the things that they're talking about. This is not the things they're talking about. They're talking about, right, of living a surrendered life, and the glory of a human fully alive, right, is living in that call that God has called them. And it has very, very little to do with the number on a scale.
Right. And think about how, so I, just honestly, this is everywhere, right? And even it's funny because and I don't know if this is the same for you and kind of the way, you operate because you have the RD behind your name, people are more careful. I don't know if careful is the right word, but around me, like when you write books, your friends aren't necessarily the people that read your books or know anything about what you're doing. Right. And so I am still constantly surrounded by dieting conversations.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes I can speak in, sometimes it's just not the right context to speak in. And, because it would be shaming in front of a group of people, or just wouldn't be appropriate to take over. but I observe, right? I listen. And I want to say one friend, but I probably have more than that, but I'm thinking of one friend specifically who has never dieted and has this just completely healthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
And she doesn't I love going out with her because we don't have to talk about food. Yes. We don't have to talk about what foods she's eating or not eating. And she talks about food like, oh, this is so delicious. I love this. Oh, I think I'm gonna have a little bit of this later. I mean, she talks about food like with this excitement and this joy, and there's not shame there. It's just like, yeah, this is good stuff. And guess what? She naturally, I don't actually, maybe I shouldn't use that word, right? But I think because she's never broken some of her signals, she eats pretty healthy because that's what she enjoys. She likes the taste of unique vegetables and fruits, but she will have a treat. She will show up with brownies. She will have a glass of wine. She is not, she's not like orthorexic in any way. She has a completely healthy relationship with food. And then I watch other friends that feel shame because they couldn't stick with the 3 milkshakes and 2 bars a day plan that was supposed to make them skinny in $800 a month, and I'm just like, no, don't like, and it's hard also to having walked the path to see and think about the reality is that you can get away with, I'm going to use that in air quotes if you're just listening, you can get away with that in your 20s and maybe in your 30s, but eventually your body's going to say, yeah, no, we're not doing that anymore. That was fun, but now we're going to shut down your thyroid. We're going to shut down your adrenals. We're going to cause you all kinds of stomach issues because you have not been eating correctly, right? And that's a real thing. Can you share with us, like, what have you seen on that front? Like, what is this bringing for you? What are you thinking of?
Well, I need to tell you this funny story, and I love my mother-in-law so much. And so if she ever listens to this, which I don't think she does listen to podcasts, so I think we're kind of free in this. So we were at dinner, and I'm just going to tell you this funny story, because when you're saying to people, like, kind of not say things around you, because no, they do. So my mother-in-law is talking about a friend who I don't often know who she's talking about, but she's telling, and then she said, well, he is so happy because his son-in-law put them on a diet. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And I said, oh, the table's full, my sweet nieces, my kids, everything. And I said, oh, what is that? It is called the keto.
The keto.
I said, do you mean the keto? And she thinks for a minute. No, it's the keto. And so I said, oh, is it low carb? She thinks for a minute. No, it's all carbs. And he's feeling wonderful. And so I'm like holding it all in going, well, I would like that one too. I think say yes to the keto. Keto.
Yes. Keto diet, all carbs. Sounds good.
I say yes. Well, one of the things that has happened, so I have my master's in nutrition, but everyone has their PhD. Mm-hmm. And you said at the beginning, everyone has a PhD. And so what happens is that it's this space. And I remember, and I think I told you this story a while back when we talked, but when I was a young dietitian, and one of my first clients who I just adored, she was an atheist. We worked together for about 1.5 years, and the Lord just kept having me pull up my Bible. I just would be like, I know you're an atheist, but let me just read this to you. She was marriage and body and struggling and all that. she just became enamored by the word and would say, I don't believe it, but, and I would be like, okay. And then, well, when I gave birth to my second son, this thing now 18 years ago, she went to church on her own and she walked down the aisle, became a believer.
Wow.
Like, okay, I'm in, I'm all in. It was the coolest thing. And the Lord was reminding me that he didn't need me because I was giving birth and she was being born. So it's like, he's like, I got it. So, but then she went to church and became involved in church and women's small groups. And we met again some months later when I was, off maternity leave. And she said, I just am so, just telling me all the things God had been doing and excitement and joy. And she said, but I'm so fascinated. She said, I don't really understand because this is God of all creation. You guys have known this. This was like a mystery to me. And she said, I just thought Christian women wouldn't struggle with body image and body and dieting, but it's the same. Mm-hmm. And I was young. She was older than I was by 10 or 12 years. And I was in my 20s. And I remember getting on my face and saying, Lord, help me make a difference in that. And that began my speaking career, because I was like, Lord, it was devastating to me because I knew she was right. Mm-hmm. It was, what she was saying was accurate. And as we as believers, this, right, we serve the God of the universe who let me read this. I was going to read this C.S. Lewis quote, just the bottom of this quote by C.S. Lewis. He says, if we consider the unblushing promises of reward and the staggering nature of the rewards promised in the Gospels, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too. We are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. Mm-hmm. I thought, can you imagine when we are with Jesus face to face, these bodies are exchanged for a glorious body, and we got to go, what was I doing? Right. He's going, that's all you're asking from me. You're spin your wheels on a weight or a size body or some version of yourself that the world wants when I've got more than you can ask, think, or imagine. And so how is that appealing to a world that doesn't know the Savior? Like, how is that even, it's like, okay, we're the same. And to the glory of God, let us not be the same. Oh Lord, let us not be the same. Let us be tethered to you through hunger and learning about our bodies and be gracious. And let us, what is so cool? I had written this for a talk a while back of what does a Proverbs 31 woman look like in relation to this, and right. She seeks the Lord with all her heart. She nurtures and takes care of her body to the glory of God. She glorifies God in her body. She doesn't glorify the body. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. In her body. She doesn't talk about her size, her eating, her body. That allows others to feel safe in her presence. Yeah. Right. We allow others to feel safe in our presence when we're not talking about our size, what we're eating, what diet we're on. She invites others to the table. And what our dieting does is it pushes us away from the banquet table. Yeah. There's place card on that table that only we can fill. Right. And we're dieting and we're managing and we push away from the table and therefore can't offer hospitality. Right. We're losing something when we're doing that. And so when we say, back to your original question of, yes, this is true, but I need to lose weight. In the long run, learning to listen to your hunger and fullness cues and coming back and finding that relationship with food and finding that peace with exercise and listening to our body is the best way to find that natural size. Right. It's the long-term solution. So if the answer is I need to lose weight, I would still say, let's start here. Now, if you, I always give this disclaimer, intuitive eating is not the answer for somebody with anorexia trying to weight restore. I always would give that disclaimer. That's not where we intuitive eat because your cells are disrupted. And so we don't use that when I'm working with somebody who needs, refeeding, we don't use that at all. And even somebody who has disrupted their signals with chronic dieting, I say, let's do a template. Let's do breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And let's even do an afternoon snack. And let's just build in that template to build in those signals again.
Yeah.
Let's get rhythm going, because you have disrupted that rhythm. And that's a pretty natural rhythm, is eating 3 times a day and 1 to 2 snacks. And so let's listen to that, and let's pay attention to hunger and fullness. And maybe you're thinking, oh, I don't even know where my hunger is. Well, then let's build in some template and see what that looks like. And so it's not like, oh, do intuitive eating or stop dieting. And then it's kind of like, wait, what? Then what?
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, because I think the reality is, and this needs to be said, a lot of people listening today or watching, you cannot go from 20 years of dieting to now I'm an intuitive eater.
Yes.
It's going to be a hard leap. You may need some help in there.
Yes.
You may be able to do it, like, by God's grace, I pray you can, but you may need some help. And that's what Amy's doing. That's what Amy offers. And you've got, Tracy was on the show last week. Like, these are the women that I'm talking to that I hope I can connect you all with. I don't know if their practices have the capacity to take on all the clients I could send them, but it's okay. There's no shame in coming to the point where you're like, oh yeah, I might need someone to help me in this process, because my signals have been whacked out for a long time. And so that's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. And it's normal, and it's more common than not. It's more common. And just to echo, gracious, it's a process. And that's even what I love about this podcast, is it's just support in that journey. It's to go, oh, you're not crazy. That's not crazy that you feel that way. Or that's not crazy that you're, when Heather talked about the beginning of the hope of that diet, of that Monday, I'm going to start Monday. And in this many weeks, I'll be this weight, and this many weeks. My mom had a bookmark, and it was like, if I start January 1st, by February, I'll be this, by March, I'll be this. It was this bookmark. Like, it was telling her basically her joy monitor, right? Like, by next December, I'll be this. And it didn't give any account for, did somebody need to lose 80 pounds? It's like just assuming that everyone needed to. It was like, what in the world? Well, sometimes we're grieving that feeling of like, diet giving us hope. What am I clinging to? Feeling like, am I going to change? What's the joy here? And what the beautiful place is, you've got to have support. And that's, again, what I love about this podcast and these listeners is that, and that's what we do, our Peace with Food. When Heather was mentioning the app, one of the reasons that Megan and I, my colleague in Idaho, and then Gabrielle, who's does our social media and all that, one of the reasons that we wanted to do an app was because it was something tangible to give to support to that process. It's like, we need support. And it is hard to go from 0 to, right. It's like, how do I do this? And so all of that, this community, and we've just got to be with it. We got to help each other. Yeah. It's so normal to need support, and to ask questions, and to stop and start, and to go, oh boy, I'm going to have to surrender the idea of dieting again. And normal, so normal.
And the app is phenomenal, you guys. In fact, I took a picture and I put it on Instagram this week, because I got a little alert when I was at my son's soccer game, and it was irony, because I got the alert on my watch, and what I was trying to do was watch the soccer game and order pizza at the same time, because it was like a 5:00 game. And so we had no dinner plan, and I was trying to find pizza on my phone. And then my watch comes on with this little message, and it says, just giving yourself permission doesn't mean you're going to overindulge. And I was like, yes. And, and I wasn't really feeling any anxiety about the pizza. I've worked through a lot of this stuff over the years, but I was like, yeah, I'm now excited about the pizza. Bring on the pizza. Oh, go team. but anyway, no, the app is a great resource. And so I will make sure that because can anyone join the app, or do they need to be one of your clients?
Oh, no, it's for the whole world.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I'll put the link in the show notes so people can find that app and sign up for it. I know there's a monthly fee, but it will be worth it. If you've been paying $600 a month to get Frankenfood to be on a diet, let me tell you, this is not that much at all, nowhere close. And it's going to be so much more helpful to your life than Frankenfood. Anyway, let's, as we kind of wrap up here, Amy,
Yeah.
This, can you repeat to me, you had your last two Proverbs 31 woman points there. What was the second to last one? Will you say that one more time for me?
The one about
right there.
Doesn't talk about her size, that one?
Yeah, I think it was something about glory. The word glory was in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. She nurtures and takes care of her body to the glory of God. She doesn't glorify her body, but she glorifies God in her body.
And so as you're saying that, I mean, I've talked on the show a bunch of times just about how we've misused that your body is the temple verse in the church as your body has to be hot, because if you're hot, then people will worship God. No. Your body was made for worship, right? Yes. But I want to end this on a hopeful note.
Amen.
And I was thinking about the truth, and this is something God showed me last year too. You know, I was raised believing that one of the things that would be awesome about heaven is that I was going to have a perfect body, right? That was something I should look forward to, having a perfect body in heaven someday. And we did this series in my church on heaven and what heaven would be like. And we used John Burke's book, Imagine Heaven. I don't know if you've read that or not, but it's pretty interesting talking to people who had these near-death experiences and actually gone to heaven for a little bit. And as we were going through that series, I was like, you know what? I don't know. Well, let me back up a second. In that series, he was talking about how people would go and they would recognize people from their past.
Yeah.
And I thought, if we're going to be recognizable in heaven, then chances are we're not all going to be size 2. Right. Because what's recognizable about some of us is that we're not a size 2, right? Like if you're 6 foot tall, you know, that's going to be weird, right? And so, it jolted me. I was like, wait a second, not everyone's going to have a quote unquote perfect body as we define it in the year 2021 in America body when they get to heaven. And it's like, well, no, of course they wouldn't, because God doesn't define beauty that way. That's nowhere in the Bible do we read this description of a beautiful woman. And that's like God's definition. Her thighs don't touch, but she's got just enough butt that it's round, you know, and like, no, it's not there. But why our bodies will be glorious in heaven and why it won't be a thing is because I think we will finally recognize that we are not the ones that deserve glory, that He is. And we won't be tempted to try to glorify ourselves in this way. We will be completely surrendered to His glory, and the temptation to worship ourselves or anything else around us will be gone, and we'll surrender to worship in Him. Oh. And I don't know. I felt like that was, was kind of where I went when you said that.
Amen. Yes. And amen.
Well, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Oh, I do want to end on hope. Yes and amen that. I love what you said, because when I talk about exchanging this body for a glorious body, I say that same thing. That our version of a glorious body is like the dimmest, faintest version of what God has. Right. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with reflecting His image. And the more that I look like Christ, and the more that I am being changed, the old is gone and the new has come. These things matter less and less. And let us bear witness to the light. It says in John, right? We come to bear witness to the light, and our lives get to do that. And I'm just so enjoyed our time together.
Amen. I love it. Well, Amy, thanks so much for being on. Tell everyone where they can connect with you.
Yeah. So Hello Peace with Food is the website. And then you can find the Peace with Food app in the store. I'm kind of non-social media myself. Our Peace with Food app has an Instagram. And then if you get the app, you get to be in the Facebook group and all that. We're all there. So yes.
Awesome. You probably have more peace with life because you avoid social media. It all makes sense. Well, Amy, thank you so much for sharing your truth today. It was just so good. So I appreciate you being on the show. And thank you for watching YouTube. Hey, you can press that little like button and subscribe, all those things. I'm not 25, so I'm not good at like saying that all the time. But if you would do that, that'd be awesome. And thank you for listening if you're part of our podcast audience. And I hope you'll subscribe and hey, leave a comment if you like this show. That's all for today. I hope something in today's episode has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye-bye.